A new hotel coming to town is nothing special. What Skylar Chan wants to do is a bit different. His plan? Open a hotel on the moon. He thinks for guests, it'll be a hoot.
You're going to see the Earth rise. We're going to aim to have experiences at some point, such as like ATVing on the moon, golfing on the moon, like moonwalking, like a lot of really incredible experiences.
Yeah, he's serious. He wants to build a hotel in space, and he wants it to open soon. Hi, I'm Paul Havershoot. Welcome to The Cost of Living. How do you make a business plan for something that doesn't exist? The stuff you learn in hospitality management doesn't exactly cover asteroid strikes. But Skylar has a plan, and some serious backers. So is his dream for a moon hotel reality, or science fiction? Also today, nearly 2 million Canadians are affected by ADHD. That's like 1 out of every 20 people in the country. So, what does that mean for how they spend money? Up first, the great debates. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? Rent versus buy? Even if you don't hear about them for a while, they never really go away. So, Jen Keane, I know you're a homeowner. When was the last time you rented?
Oh, it's been a while.
Okay, so then were you always the type of person who just really wanted to buy a house?
Not really. I mean, I think I really wanted to buy a horse, actually.
Well, that's different.
Didn't happen for me. But for most Canadians, I would say home ownership looms large. In a recent RBC survey, 2/3 of Canadians said they've always dreamed of owning a home, and they're prepared to sacrifice in order to get one. Like they'll work 2 jobs, or they'll wait to have kids so that they can save up for that house.
Okay, so it's important to them, but then there are people who always want to rent and always have rented. And this has been a debate for a long time in Canada, kind of a classic debate, to rent or to buy.
Yeah, and I think clearly in Canada, most people are on the side of buying. More than 65% of all homes here are owned. But let's just take a look at the case for renting, because it is looking better today than it has in quite a while.
And that's a shift, because if you look back over the last number of years, the rental market got super tight, rents went way up, and then on the other side of things, you had low interest rates, people kind of like this thought of getting in and buying a home.
True. But even still, there are a lot of committed renters out there, people who feel just as passionately that it is the best option. Like Deanne Marsh. She's a television producer in Toronto, and she rents the main floor of a house with her husband and her cat, and they love it.
I live in a neighborhood I really like. I'm very close to Kensington Market. I'm just across from the AGO and like the OCAD area. I feel very much central.
Okay, so this is kind of odd, but when I lived in Toronto, which was a long time ago, I lived pretty much right there, close to Chinatown, Queen West, downtown. I loved it.
So does Deanne. The other thing that she likes about it is the freedom.
I'm known to change my mind about things, and to know that like there is sort of like, if circumstances change and like, or I get an opportunity to like move to another country to like just like pick up and go, I need to give 2 months notice and I'm out.
So she's footloose. She is fancy free.
She is. But it's not as though she's never considered buying a house. Like during the pandemic, when prices were rising, she did have enough money for a down payment. And she started to think, oh, maybe I should get in the market. So she did come very close to buying a condo.
And it just didn't really work out in that moment. And I'm glad it didn't, because what I would be able to buy would be a downgrade in my lifestyle compared to what I rent.
because she's a renter, she gets to live where she wants in a place that maybe she wouldn't be able to afford otherwise.
And she is lucky. Like, Deanne has lived in the same place for a dozen years with rent control, so she's paying less than average for her 2-bedroom. But rents across this country have been dropping. In the last year, the average price nationally dropped by more than 5%. In the really hot housing markets like Vancouver, they're seeing some of the lowest rents they've had since early 2022.
Even in Vancouver, because, Vancouver's Vancouver. Like, what kind of numbers are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's still pretty expensive to live there, right? The average asking rent is about $2,700 a month. But that's about $600 cheaper than 3 years ago.
Okay, that's down nearly 20%.
And there's lots more available because vacancies are up. Dan Wertel is a real estate agent in Vancouver, and he says today landlords have to compete for tenants.
Incentives are definitely abound. They're everywhere. And those can be in the form of, 1 month free rent. They'll toss in maybe utilities, internet, that kind of thing. Maybe the pet fee is waived or you get the parking spot included, those type of things.
Something I never thought I'd hear, Vancouver turning into a renter's market.
Well, it's getting there. And that is true for a lot of cities across Canada. Purpose-built rental properties are going up. And at the same time, Canada's population growth has flatlined. Like if you look at BC, where Dan lives.
The province was down, I think it was 41,000 people last year. It's been 151 years since we saw population decline. So you add a declining population with a record amount of rentals coming online. I mean, it doesn't take a mathematician to kind of figure out what's going to happen next.
Well, I'm not a mathematician, but more supply, less demand, and
bada boom.
Yeah.
But house prices are coming down too. And I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this who are strongly on the side of home ownership. No matter what they cost, some people are always going to see rent payments as money out the window.
Yeah, because the argument is you're not building equity. You're not going to own anything outright one day. But with a house, hey, you might even get some asset appreciation. It'll be worth more in 20 years.
True. But buying a house isn't the only way to grow your money over time. Ben Felix is with the investment firm PWL Capital in Ottawa. He has a YouTube channel where he talks about finance. And a few months ago, he did an analysis which makes this case.
that renting a place to live has not been a bad financial decision in Canada for the last 20 years.
Okay, and he's basing that on what?
He created a hypothetical case study where he compared a renter and a buyer. So these two people have the same amount of money saved. One of them buys an apartment. The other rents and puts what would have been their down payment money into the market. Now, the renter also invests the money he saves by not paying for the upkeep of a home.
In the model, the renter is saving that cost difference and investing it in stocks. So they're investing the initial down payment and then the ongoing cash flow cost difference. And so that's what's allowing the renter to keep pace with the owner financially.
Okay, when he says renters are keeping pace with owners, what exactly did he find?
Well, he found that the two people basically ended up with about the same amount of money over a 20-year period between 2005 and 2025. And Ben was actually surprised by that. Like, he thought home ownership would be a slam dunk winner. But the hypothetical homeowner in his case study came out slightly ahead, like very slightly ahead, in only a few cities like Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. Almost everywhere else in Canada, it was a wash.
Yes, house prices went up, but stocks, which is what we have the renter investing in, also went up a lot over this period.
So if you invested the money that you'd saved, you could be sitting on a big chunk of change.
Now, would that be enough, though, to match what a house would be worth?
In a lot of cases, yes, and sometimes even more. But obviously, like, a lot of assumptions went into Ben's model, and he's not trying to definitively prove that renting will always make you more money in the long run, right, than owning. He just thinks that people often overestimate how much better it is to buy a home, and they underestimate how much it costs to look after a home.
I remember when we had our rental, the backsplash in the kitchen was all mangled up and the grout wasn't done properly, whatever. But I was like, I don't care. It's a rental. It doesn't matter. The sink worked fine. But then when you own, at least this is what I find. I've talked to other people who find the same thing. You want to make everything nice because it's yours.
I go to Home Depot a lot and buy a lot of tools because you want to make stuff nice.
I always joke that if my husband doesn't go to Home Depot on the weekend, they call because they worry about him. They want to know where he is.
But you know what? You two, you own your house. You've built equity in your house. And for the whole time you've lived there, you've had a place to live.
On top of that, owning a home is like forced savings, right? It's a no-brainer. You're investing in an asset with every mortgage payment you make.
Yeah, if you're a renter, you need to take any money you're saving and probably be super disciplined about investing it.
And that is tough. An American study last year actually showed that when young people give up on the idea of saving for a home, they tend to be more reckless with their money. They make riskier investments and they spend more on things like travel rather than saving.
Well, yeah, they're the youth. YOLO.
Yeah, I mean, renters have to be more conscious about saving, more disciplined about building up a nest egg. That's what Deanne Marsh is doing.
So she is disciplined?
Yeah, I mean, she has her money invested in the market because she sees renting as a long-term strategy for her, and she's okay with a certain amount of uncertainty. Like, even if her landlord sells her place tomorrow, she says she's okay with that.
I'm willing to take on a little bit of that risk, and I would like deal with it when I get the heave, and I will have like a lot more money that I can potentially use to buy something or rent somewhere else.
And in the meantime, she gets to live exactly where she wants to live.
Yeah, in your old neighborhood.
I miss my old neighborhood. It's great.
I'm feeling the nostalgia.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
On your Radio and Buy podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. If you think about your typical financial advice, don't spend more than you earn, pay off your credit card first, it makes sense. But what if it doesn't? Imagine your brain is wired like a pinball machine. Your attention bounces around. Instead of making smart spending decisions, your financial ball goes down the gutter. Jenny DeRosio finds for some people, that's what life can be like. So, what then?
Zina O'Kill has always been a bit quirky. She has these little habits, like singing to her pet.
So every morning I'll have a new song for my cat, like every morning without a fault.
And her quirks don't end there.
I saw that people in Japan use umbilical cord serum for beauty and for energy. And I found a website and I was like, I must have it.
Zina didn't think twice. She clicked add to cart and bought it. She spent $500 on it.
Without talking to my husband, I just went ahead and purchased.
Zina started wondering if her behaviors like impulsive shopping and singing to her cats might be explained another way. So she talked to a therapist.
By the end of the meeting, he said, yes, you very much have ADHD. I was like, oh, okay. That explains a lot, actually.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It impacts attention span, concentration, and impulses. Zina is one of nearly 2 million Canadians affected by it. And if you look online, it almost seems like as many people are talking about it.
Things that I thought that were normal, but actually signs of ADHD.
You can find advice on ADHD at work, ADHD in relationships.
The problem is you're both annoyed about the same things, and this is where
and ADHD and money.
There's a lot of chatter around this topic.
Jody Stauffer is a financial planner in Edmonton.
The chaos of your money, and you don't know how much you're spending and where it's going. You know, this is where we really see it in ADHD, but I'm seeing it across the board.
Between subscriptions, apps, and online banking, our money can be kind of all over the place. And that can make personal finance tricky, especially if you have attention deficit disorder, like most of Jody's clients, who say they've tried everything, but nothing's worked.
I tried, every type of app. I've tried every type of planner. I've tried to organize my space properly. I've tried to, have sticky notes everywhere.
All that money chaos has a cost. Just ask Elise Fulmore. She says she's been paying for it her entire life.
The ADHD tax is essentially like all of the extra costs that people with ADHD pay due to their ADHD. So costs can obviously be monetary, but they can also be things like time and energy and other resources like that.
Elise is a finance influencer in Edmonton.
You forgot to pay for parking and now you have a parking ticket, or you bought like 3 of the same item because you forgot that you had another one at home, or you buy plane tickets for the wrong day.
She shares strategies that help people with ADHD manage their money, like keeping track of debt payments using a sticker chart.
If it works for your brain, like, why not do it? I think it's really satisfying and enjoyable to give yourself a little sticker every time you achieve something.
Elise says the trick is to find the things that motivate you. Sometimes that means zhuzhing up a classic tool like a savings tracker by adding in color or a theme, like the time she created a Taylor Swift budgeting template.
So it was like different sections for all of her albums, and it was like coloring those in every time I saved up a certain amount.
Other times, it's trying out savings competitions against your friends.
I'm someone who needs a lot of gamification. So when it comes to tackling my money, I basically need to make everything more fun. And I like to say, like, I'm injecting dopamine into all these systems.
Zina O'Kill has found her own systems that work, like automating payments so she doesn't forget the boring stuff. And she is trying to rein in her impulse spending. But for the record, when it comes to that skincare splurge, she has no regrets.
When I take it, I notice a difference in my skin. I don't know if it's in my head, but I notice a difference. And it helps with my energy as well. I think it was worth the money.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Jenny DeRosio.
Skylar Chan has a dream. He wants to open a hotel on the moon. You heard right, a moon hotel. So how do people react when he tells them?
It's very polarizing. There's a camp of people who are like, yeah, like, this is awesome. Like, hell yeah, we're going to have hotels on the moon. We're going to have habitats. We're going to have cities on the moon. And then you've got people who are like, of course, they're not going to like it, but that's just reality.
His company is called Galactic Resource Utilization, or GRU Space. The name is kind of a cheeky nod to the supervillain from Despicable Me, Felonious Gru, who plotted to steal the moon. Skylar wants his hotel to be grand. Think big rotunda, Corinthian columns. As for what guests would do there,
you're going to see the Earthrise. We're going to aim to have experiences at some point, such as like ATVing on the moon, golfing on the moon, like moonwalking, like a lot of really incredible experiences. Duration of stay, we're targeting at least week-long stays inside the Moon Hotel.
Staying at an all-inclusive on the moon may seem like science fiction, but Skylar doesn't think so. He's part of a budding industry, space tourism. The amount spent on trips into low orbit last year is estimated at more than $1 billion. Some projections see the market topping $80 billion in the next decade. You can take those for what they're worth, but Skylar wants to get in on the ground floor. So let's take a real look at this. Is Skylar a dreamer or just dreaming?
So the master plan is, and we start by building the first hotel on the moon, but that's the wedge to building permanent infrastructure on the moon. So in other words, if you want to have this future of cities on the moon and Mars, people being born on the moon and Mars, you can't depend on just hauling all of those things from Earth to the moon and Mars. Like, it's a lot cheaper if you can use local resources on the moon.
That's the crux of his business plan, figuring out how to use the raw material that's already on the moon to build stuff. And he thinks he knows how to do it.
We're going to take regolith. So regolith is topsoil on the moon, excavate that, and turn that into building material. So we're using something called a geopolymer, which you can think of it like glue that we're bringing from Earth to the moon to combine it with the soil on the moon to make the bricks.
He wants to make space bricks. And not just for his hotel. NASA is planning to build a moon base. It wants to start construction in 2028, and it will need something to build with. GRU plans to build its space brick machine here on Earth, then drop it off on the moon next year. How does someone become the potential proprietor of a moon hotel? Growing up in Vancouver, Skylar's idol was astronaut Chris Hadfield. He wanted to follow in his space boots. But then Skylar thought, why just him? What would it take for everyone to go?
And so I became obsessed with solving the key bottleneck, which isn't transportation or rocketry, it's off-world habitation using local resources on the moon. And so basically reverse engineered my entire college experience to working on things that would enable me to do that. So I had the chance to go to Berkeley, which has a great space program. I worked on like a NASA-funded 3D printer that went to space.
The night before he graduated from Berkeley, Skylar, who's now 23, got a call from Y Combinator. It's a Silicon Valley firm that invests in startup companies. It gives them $500,000, introduces them to investors, and helps them get off the ground. But now, if GRU wants to hit its own timelines, it will need to move fast. It plans to open an inflatable version of its moon hotel in 2032. As for its first guests, Skylar sees the target market as
people who are existing space tourists, people who have gone to space, people who enjoy like very luxury experiences. Again, like we're not going to sugarcoat it that this is a very expensive experience, but that's fine. That's just the reality of how things are going to develop as an industry.
You can now make a down payment for up to $1 million to reserve a spot. The eventual cost would be many times that. If you had the means, would you spend millions for a week-long stay on the moon? Skylar will need to know the answer to that question and many more. So, is this where we look more closely at this idea and dump cold water on it? Well, yeah.
The challenge is astronomical, pun intended. But space is very big, space is very dangerous, and space is hard.
Michael Byers is a professor at UBC and a co-founder of the Outer Space Institute. So space is hard, dangerous, and also expensive.
10 years ago, there were 2 space mining companies that started up, Planetary Resources and Deep Space Mining, both of whom attracted hundreds of millions of dollars of support, and both of which went bankrupt because, again, space is hard. And the moment you start encountering some of the scientific realities like lunar dust, the costs, they multiply almost exponentially.
What is lunar dust? Well, apparently the moon isn't just made of green cheese.
It's been pummeled by meteorites for 1 billion years. And so these little tiny shards of glass essentially cover the moon. And they're extremely hazardous. They get into machine parts. Astronauts have to be very careful when they get out of their spacesuits on the return to their spacecraft.
So lunar dust could be a big problem. But it's not the only one. How will guests get to the hotel? The big private space companies, Blue Origin and SpaceX, are working on lunar landers, but they're not ready yet. And what of the more philosophical questions? Like, who owns the moon?
The moon belongs to all of humanity. Certainly you can go and visit, but from an ethical perspective, you have to leave no trace behind. You pack out your garbage. You don't desecrate the surface with things that are visible from Earth or could clash with the belief of people who live here on our planet.
Before Skylar builds anything on the moon, he'll need to answer some deep questions. And some more practical ones.
How do you get the insurance to cover a hotel on the moon? Who is going to rescue people if there's a terrible accident and your customers are stuck on the lunar surface? The cost and risk factors involved with this, the technology development, the timelines, I'm sorry, they're not going to get any of my money as an investment.
But Michael also thinks GRU isn't really after his money. a moon hotel is a sexy idea. For someone trying to attract deep-pocketed Silicon Valley investors, he says Skylar wouldn't be the first space entrepreneur to use a little razzle-dazzle.
Elon Musk got the world's attention when he started talking about putting people on Mars. So this was his moon hotel. He used that attention to raise some investment and to get some NASA contracts that enabled him to develop a reusable rocket. Moon hotel is, it's a real stretch for me, but if it's getting attention, well, maybe there's something that's justifiable from an entrepreneurial perspective, right? That's your hook.
For all his skepticism about a moon hotel, Michael says, yeah, NASA does have serious plans for a moon base. Anyone who can make bricks out of lunar topsoil would have its attention. So Gru's plans, they may not be as out there as they might sound.
Look, if they can pull this off, if they can pull 1/10 of this off, I salute them. My guess is they'll end up working on a contract for NASA rather than doing this entirely on their own. But we need these dreamers. We need these people who are willing to devote their lives to trying to do something that might look crazy at first and ends up changing the future for all of us.
For Skylar, changing the future, as grandiose an idea as that might seem, is exactly what he hopes to do.
I mean, life is short, my personal take, but we're all going to die someday. You better be doing something that you truly love. I firmly believe this is the most exciting thing anyone in my generation, my age, can be working on, is to make humanity interplanetary within our lifetime.
That's his dream. He knows the odds are stacked against him pulling it off, but that's why they call it a moonshot. That's all for the show, at least on this planet. On the moon, we're on like a week and a half from now. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Jenny DeRozio, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Jeff Kynock. Oh, and if you're listening, you haven't subscribed, please give us a follow. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Thanks for listening.